Part 1. First Arrivals, First Encounters. In 1549, a Catholic missionary named Francis Xavier brought Christianity to Japan. Europeans had first arrived 6 years earlier, when a Portuguese ship introduced guns to the war-torn islands. Christianity was already known in East Asia, with missions to China since the Middle Ages, and the Nestorian Christians arriving even earlier in the 600s. Xavier helped start a religious order called the Jesuits, who wanted to spread Catholic beliefs to the rest of the world. In 1542, he was sent to Goa, India, where he became upset by the cruel and immoral behavior of the local Portuguese traders. He worried that their actions pushed away non-Christians from converting. Looking for new places to spread the faith, Xavier went to Indonesia, but struggled because of conflicts between the Portuguese and local Muslim leaders. In Malacca, he met a Japanese man named Anjiro, who fled Japan after he was accused of manslaughter and wanted to convert to Christianity. Seeing this as an opportunity, Xavier, Anjiro, and some Jesuits traveled to Japan, arriving in Kagoshima in Kyushu in 1549. Xavier tried to meet the emperor in Kyoto, but failed. Instead, he focused on the local lords, the daimyo. He introduced himself as an ambassador of Christ, and his efforts to learn Japanese customs convinced many. Within 2 months, he had 500 converts, including some Buddhist priests. His biggest success was in Bungo, where a powerful daimyo, Otomo Serene, started to support his mission. Xavier then left Japan in 1551 to bring Christianity to China, but died waiting to enter the country. His efforts ultimately helped firmly establish Christianity in East Asia. In the 1500s, entering China was nearly impossible, as Xavier would find out. The Ming Dynasty, which was ruling at the time, valued Chinese traditions and did not want foreign influence. After driving out the Mongols in the 1300s, China tightly controlled trade and diplomacy, which encouraged it. In 1557, 5 years after Xavier died on an island nearby, Portuguese traders set up a colony in Macau, near Guangzhou. Macau became a key base for Catholic missions. The local Jesuit leader, Alessandro Valignano, believed missionaries needed to separate from European colonialism and adopt Chinese customs to help convert them. In 1583, Valignano sent the Jesuits Michael Ruggieri and Francesco Pazio to start a small mission near Guangzhou. Matteo Ricci, a brilliant scholar and linguist, soon joined the two. Unlike earlier missionaries who focused on commoners, Ricci aimed to convert China's educated elite, hoping their influence would spread Christianity. He impressed scholars by teaching Western math, cartography, and astronomy. Despite 2 years of effort, there were only 20 converts. Ricci realized that to succeed, he needed the Ming Emperor's support. Starting in 1589, he deepened his adaptation to Chinese culture. He switched from Buddhist monk robes to Confucian scholar robes to gain more respect among the elite. He also built a Chinese-style church near Guangzhou and welcomed the first Chinese Jesuits. Still, By 1594, there were only 7 Jesuits, 3 mission stations, and 100 converts in a country of 150 million people. Ricci's fame as a scholar grew, and a high-ranking official eventually invited him to Beijing. After 15 years in China, he was close to meeting the emperor. But once in Beijing, he found out that the emperor himself could not be met face to face, delaying his mission. Matteo Ricci died in Beijing in 1610, never having met the emperor he wanted to convert, but he still influenced China. He showed respect for Chinese culture, shared knowledge through maps and his books, and taught many students. After his death, the emperor allowed him to be buried in Beijing. By then, about 2,500 Chinese had become Christians. Before Ricci died, he chose Niccolo Longobardo to continue his work. However, Longobardo was stricter and less open to Chinese customs, which made things harder for missionaries. Ricci's real successors were Adam Schall and Ferdinand Verbeist. Their scientific talent, especially in astronomy, helped keep the mission alive. In 1610, the Chinese court's Muslim astronomers made a mistake in predicting an eclipse. Since calendars were very important in Chinese court life, this error was unforgivable. One of Ricci's students, Paul Shu-Guangxi, used this mistake to suggest that Jesuits should help with calendar calculations instead. The emperor agreed, and Jesuits started working in the Bureau of Mathematics. At the same time, China faced many problems: corruption, tax failures, and military uprisings. A group of semi-nomadic people from the north called the Manchus saw this weakness and invaded. In 1644, they took Beijing and toppled the Ming dynasty, proclaiming the Qing dynasty in its place. Some members of the Ming royal family fled south and converted to Christianity, hoping for a Christian future in China. But much of the family was later hunted down and killed. Unlike past dynasties, the Ming's fall did not end Christianity in the country. Adam Schall helped make it acceptable to the new Manchu rulers. In 1644, he correctly predicted an eclipse while Muslim and Confucian astronomers failed to. The new emperor, Shunzhi, was impressed and made Schall head of the Bureau of the Calendar. Schall's new influence helped Christianity survive under the early Qing dynasty. In 1551, after Francis Xavier left Japan, only one priest, Cosme de Torres, and a lay brother stayed to continue the Christian mission. At first, they had protection from the daimyo of Yamaguchi, but after rebels overthrew him, the missionaries were forced to leave. However, Otomo Serines still supported Christianity, and the Jesuits found safety under him. Under de Torres, the number of Japanese Christians, called Kirishitans, grew to 30,000. By 1581, there were over 100,000. Christianity gained more respect in the country when a rich Portuguese merchant, Luis de Almeida, gave up his wealth to help the poor. In 1555, he opened Japan's first Christian orphanage, and later built a hospital. By 1563, he converted Omura Sumitada, the first daimyo to fully embrace Christianity. Sumitada later made his land a Christian territory, and, in 1579, gave the Jesuits the village of Nagasaki. Nagasaki then became a major Christian hub and a key port for European traders. During this time, Japan was uniting under the ruthless warlord Oda Nobunaga. Since Buddhist groups opposed him, he supported Christianity. He welcomed the Jesuits and allowed them to spread Christianity in Kyoto. Before his assassination in 1582, he let Alessandro Valignano enter Japan. In 1581, Valignano suggested sending 4 young Japanese boys to Europe. He wanted them to see European culture and experience Christianity's influence firsthand. The 4 boys, all about 14 years old, left Nagasaki in 1582. After 2 years, they reached Lisbon in 1584, the first Japanese to visit Europe. They traveled through Portugal, Spain, and Italy, meeting King Philip II of Spain and 2 popes. When they returned to Japan in 1590, they brought back European books, instruments, a printing press, and scientific tools. Their trip strengthened ties between Japanese Christians and Jesuits, but they returned at a time when Japan was starting to turn against Christianity. Toyotomi Hideyoshi took power after Oda Nobunaga's assassination and continued his goal of unifying Japan. As his ambition grew, he planned to invade China. To do that, he sent Konishi Yukinaga, a Christian daimyo, to attack Korea in 1592. A Jesuit priest, Gregorio de Cespedes, went with the Japanese army to minister to the Christian soldiers serving in it. Konishi advanced quickly through Korea, but the legendary Korean admiral Yi Sun-sin stopped him by cutting off his supply lines at sea. By late 1593, Konishi's soldiers suffered from hunger and cold. He asked de Cespedes to preach and baptize the samurai to help morale. However, tensions between Christian and Buddhist generals forced him to return to Japan, and he stayed there until his death in 1611. De Cespedes was not a missionary in Korea, and the first Korean Christians were instead prisoners of war forcefully taken to Japan. In 1610, they built Korea's first Catholic church in Nagasaki. Christianity also spread to Korea through China. In the 1620s, Korean scholars visiting Beijing met Jesuit missionaries and brought back books by Matteo Ricci. When the Manchus invaded China in the 1630s and 40s, they also invaded Korea. They captured their heir apparent, Prince Seolyeon, and took him to Beijing in 1644, where he met Adam Schall. The prince admired Christianity and brought Christian books and servants back to Korea, but he died soon after. His followers were sent back to China, ending this early attempt to introduce Christianity to Korea. Part 2: Persecution and Isolation. Christianity would not establish itself in Korea for almost a century and a half after the death of Prince Seolyeon. As a tradition, Korea sent 2 ambassadors to Beijing each year for trade and to honor the Chinese emperor. In 1783, a young scholar named Yi Sung-hun traveled there with his father, who was one of the ambassadors. His friend Yi Byok asked him to learn about Christianity while in Beijing. There, Yi Sung-hyun met a former Jesuit priest, Jean-Joseph de Grammont, who baptized him as Peter and gave him Catholic books to take home. Back in Korea, Sun-hyun and Byok shared their new faith. Within months, they had 1,000 followers. Without priests, they baptized people, chose leaders, and held mass, though incorrectly. Because the Korean and Western calendars did not line up, they worshipped every 7th day, even if it wasn't Sunday. Korea's Confucian leaders saw Christianity as a threat. 10 Catholics were executed, and under pressure, Sun-hyun and Byok abandoned their faith publicly, but continued to practice it in secrecy. Catholic leaders in China were shocked to see that Christianity had spread in Korea without foreign help, but were also shocked that it was being done incorrectly. They accepted the baptisms, but said the masses were invalid. A major issue was traditional ancestor worship. In Korea, it was a key tradition, but the Catholic Church called it idolatry. When Korean Catholics followed this rule, more persecution came. Many were killed, and Sun-hyun renounced his faith once again. Still, Christianity grew. By 1795, 4,000 Catholics lived in Korea. A Chinese priest, James Cho Wen-mo, secretly arrived and held the first official Catholic Mass while the government hunted him. He ministered for 6 years before surrendering in 1801 to prevent more deaths. He was executed that year alongside 200 Catholics, while 400 more were exiled. Despite continued persecution, Korean Catholics remained strong, ensuring their faith survived. As mentioned before, issues arose when Korean converts tried to honor their ancestors in non-Christian ways. A similar problem threatened Catholicism in China as well: the rights controversy. This argument dealt with how much the Jesuits could adapt Christianity to local Chinese culture and Confucian ideas. The Jesuits practiced accommodation, allowing Chinese converts to honor ancestors in their own way and use Chinese terms to describe God. They saw these as cultural traditions, not religious acts. Other missionary groups who arrived in China in the 1630s, like the Franciscans and Dominicans, disagreed. They said these practices went against Christianity. The conflict reached to the Pope in Rome, where conflicting decisions caused instability in the China mission. Despite the debate, Christianity still spread. By 1664, about 250,000 Chinese people were Christian. Adam Shaw played a big role in spreading the faith, but when the Shunzi Emperor died in 1661, Shaw lost favor. His enemies in the Chinese court accused him of disrespecting Chinese traditions. He was arrested, and some of his followers were executed. But while in jail, natural disasters scared the superstitious officials, and Shaw was released. He died old and frail soon after, in 1666. The new Kangxi Emperor allowed the missionaries to return, helping Christianity grow again. However, the rights controversy continued. When Dominicans accused the Jesuits of allowing pagan worship, the Jesuits defended themselves. Kangxi ruled that honoring ancestors was not religious worship. In 1700, the Jesuits sent word of his support to Pope Clement XI. The Pope disagreed. In 1704, he banned Chinese Christians from taking part in ancestor ceremonies, though they could attend without worshipping. He sent a representative, Maillard de Tournon, to enforce the rule. But de Tournon's disrespect for Chinese customs angered King Shi, and he was soon expelled. The controversy was laid to rest in 1742, when Pope Benedict XIV banned all Chinese rites in Christianity, ending any hope of blending the two traditions. When the Pope ruled on the rites controversy, Kangxi banned foreign missionary work in China. His son, the Yongzheng Emperor, increased persecution. Churches were taken, priests hid, and Christians suffered. In 1724, a law restricted missionaries to Guangzhou unless they worked for the emperor. Yongzheng called Christianity a false religion that clashed with Confucian values. The Qianlong Emperor made things worse. He banned soldiers from converting and punished a Chinese priest for baptizing orphans. A major crackdown from 1746 to 1748 led to mass arrests, deportations, and executions. Persecution eased by 1760, but discrimination remained. In 1773, the Catholic Church officially shut down the Jesuits after pressure from European governments and Enlightenment thinkers. Since Jesuits had the only strong tie to the imperial court out of the other missionary orders, this weakened Christian influence. Conflicts between the Catholic groups and more persecution in the 1780s hurt missions further. While Christianity struggled to gain more converts, China's population boomed, more than doubling from 116 million in 1710 to 275 million by 1796, further decreasing the faith's influence in the country. In 1793, British diplomat Lord Macartney visited China, hoping to open trade. Qianlong dismissed him, saying China needed nothing from Britain. This rejection showed just how far European and Christian influence had fallen compared to when Jesuits once advised Chinese emperors. After Nobunaga was assassinated, Toyotomi Hideyoshi took over. When he took power, he supported Christianity. Many of his generals, advisors, and even his personal doctor followed the faith. He once considered converting half of Japan, including Kyushu, where many Christian daimyos lived. Then, in 1587, Hideyoshi suddenly changed his mind. He accused Jesuits of forcing people to convert, persecuting Buddhists, and helping Portuguese traders sell Japanese people into slavery. He banned missionaries, took land from Christian daimyos, and ordered converts to give up their faith. But he did not fully enforce these rules, and even welcomed back the Tensho embassy when it returned in 1590. In 1593, Spanish Franciscans arrived from the Philippines. Unlike the Jesuits, who focused on converting nobles, the Franciscans helped the poor and sick of Japan. But as they gained influence, Hideyoshi grew suspicious. In 1597, he ordered the execution of 26 Christians, who were forced to march to Nagasaki and be crucified. This marked the start of severe persecution. When Hideyoshi died in 1598, Tokugawa Ieyasu took power. Soon, Protestant traders from the Netherlands and England arrived, competing with the Portuguese and Spanish. Unlike Catholic missionaries, the Protestant traders focused on trade, not on converting people. The Japanese soon took a liking to the Protestant Dutch, further tearing down Catholicism's influence. By 1614, Ieyasu banned Christianity entirely, fearing it threatened Japan's traditions. After Ieyasu's death, persecution became even harsher. In 1622, his son Hidetada oversaw the act of dozens of Christians being burned alive in Nagasaki. But worse was yet to come. Despite harsh persecution, Christians in Japan refused to fight back because they believed violence would not lead to martyrdom. Most Christian daimyos were killed off or had abandoned their faith. The remaining followers were poor farmers and samurai in the Shimabara Peninsula and Amakusa Islands in western Kyushu. Things got worse when new daimyos imposed high taxes. Farmers could not afford to pay, so officials tortured them and took women hostage. By late 1637, they had enough, and the village of Shimabara rose in revolt. About 3,700 rebels, despite having few weapons, won early battles. They openly showed their faith, carrying Christian banners and shouting the names of Christian saints as battle cries. They gathered in Hara Castle, bringing their families and supplies. Their leader, 18-year-old Amakusa Shiro, was the son of a former Christian samurai. The government sent 100,000 samurai to crush the rebellion. They decided to cut off the rebels' food and supply lines, trapping the Christians inside the castle. On April 12, 1638, the samurai stormed the castle. The rebels fought desperately for 2 bloody days, even using cooking pots as weapons. By April 15th, almost everyone, including women and children, was dead. The rebellion was crushed. The government executed the few survivors and tightened its control. In 1639, Japan sealed itself off from the world for the next 200 years, ensuring that further Christian influence was blocked. The remaining Christians went into hiding, and their faith survived only in secret. As the 19th century wore on, Christianity returned to East Asia, but this time, Protestants took the lead instead of Catholics. In 1807, British missionary Robert Morrison arrived in China and translated the Bible into Mandarin. The Qing government quickly banned Christianity, but after the Opium Wars, foreign missionaries were allowed into certain cities. Still, the need to evangelize saw Protestant missionaries venture into the rest of China. Perhaps the most important impact of Protestantism in 19th century China came when a man read a Protestant book, came to the conclusion that he was the brother of Jesus Christ, and started one of human history's deadliest wars. Like China, Japan was also forced open by Western powers, this time by the Americans. When foreign priests returned, they discovered that the underground Christian community had survived despite the strict government bans. After the Meiji Restoration in 1868, which saw Japan's Emperor Meiji be given full power and the shogunate overthrown, Meiji ended the country's anti-Christian laws in 1873. Protestantism spread quickly, and by 1889, about 40,000 Protestants lived in Japan. As for Korea, Catholicism survived despite the persecutions in 1801. By 1863, around 23,000 Catholics remained. However, fear of Western influence led to more crackdowns in 1867. This gave Protestants a chance to spread their faith. In the 1890s, Korea became a battleground during the Sino-Japanese War. The war left the city of Pyongyang in ruins, and people turned to Presbyterian missionary Samuel Moffat for guidance, leading to a rapid growth in Korea's Christian community in the decades that followed.